Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our Where the Red Fern Grows Read Aloud. We are in Chapter 9 of Where the Red Fern Grows. Yesterday we read Chapter 8. Billy is officially in his first time in hunting season with his two new dogs, Old Dan and Little Ann. And they have caught they have somewhat caught their first coon. His dogs had chased the coon up into a tree. This tree happens to be the big tree that the sycamore tree is one of the largest. It's the giant. It's a big one. And Billy has showed his determination, persistent. He's not going to give up. He's not going to accept any help from his father, who had previously offered to help him cut this tree down. He wants to do it. Why? Because he made a agreement with his dogs that if they would chase a coon up a tree, he would do the rest. So he wants to make sure they understand that he is a boy of his words. Okay, so now we are going to jump into Chapter 9 and see what Chapter 9 has in store for us. Remember, we are reading for pleasure. This is a realistic fiction novel book, chapter book, and let's go ahead and start. Chapter 9. By late evening, the happy tune I had been whistling was forgotten. My back throbbed like a stone bruise. The muscle in my legs and arms started quivering and jerking. Remember, he is chopping at this tree with his axe for about a good day now. He received food from home, slept out in the woods. He is a pretty determined young man. I couldn't gulp enough air to cool the burning heat in my lungs. My strength was gone. I could go no further. I sat down, called my dogs to me. With tears in my eyes, I told them I just couldn't cut the big tree down. I was trying hard to make them understand when I heard someone coming. It was Grandpa in a buggy. I'm sure no one in the world can understand a young boy like his grandfather can. He drove up with a twinkle in his eyes and a smile in his whiskey old face. Hello, how are you getting along? He boomed. Not so good, Grandpa, I said. I don't think I can cut it down. It's just too big. I guess I'll have to give up. Give up, Grandpa barked. No, I don't want to hear that. I'm stuttering. Okay. Give up, Grandpa barked. No, I don't want to hear you say that. No, sir, that's the last thing I want to hear. Don't ever start anything you can't finish. I don't want to give up, Grandpa, I said, but it's just too big and my strength is gone. I'm give out. Of course you are, he said. You've been going at it wrong. To do work like a fellow needs plenty of rest and food in his stomach. How am I going to get that, Grandpa, I asked. I can't leave the tree. If I do, the coon will get away. No, he won't, Grandpa said. That's what I've come here for. I'll show you how to keep the coon in the tree. He walked around the big sycamore tree, looking up, and whistled and said, Boy, this is a big one, all right? Yes, it is, Grandpa, I said. It's the biggest one in the river bottom. Grandpa started chuckling. That's all right, he said. The bigger, the better they are to fall. How are you going to make the coon stay in the tree, Grandpa, I asked. With a proud look on his face, he said, that's another one of my coon hunting tricks. Grandpa is a very experienced man. Of course, he has a lot more years from Billy, but I'm really enjoying the relationship they have. Very helpful. Coon hunting tricks learned when I was a boy. We'll keep them here. We'll keep them there, all right? Oh, I don't mean we can keep him there. Keep him there for always. But he'll stay for 4 or 5 days. That is until he gets so hungry and just has to come down. So possibly they're going to use, a prediction I'm going to make is probably they're going to use keeping the coon up there until he gets hungry, because sooner or later he's going to have to come down and get something to eat. I don't need that much time, I said. I'm pretty sure I have it down by tomorrow night. Grandpa looked at the cut. I don't know, he said. Even though it's a halfway down, you must remember you've been cutting on one half of one night and one day. So a day, 1/2 night and 1 day, a day and a half. You might make it, but it's going to take a lot of chopping. If I get a good night's sleep, I said, I got a couple of more and a couple of more meals under my belt, I can do a lot of chopping. Grandpa laughed. Speaking of meals, he said, your mom's having chicken and dumpling for supper. Now we don't want to miss that. Let's get busy. What do you want me to do, Grandpa? I asked. Well, let's see, he said. First thing we need is some sticks about 5 feet long. And take your axe, go over to the can break, and get us 6 of them. I hurried to do what Grandpa wanted, all of the time wondering what in the world he was going to do. How could he keep the coon in the tree? When I got back, he was taking some old clothes from the buggy. Take this stocking cap, he said, fit it about half full of grass and leaf. While I was doing that, Grandpa walked over and started looking up in the tree. You're pretty sure in that hollow limb, are you? He asked. He's right, he's there all right, Grandpa. I said, there's no other place he could. I looked all over it and there's no other hollow area. So another thing that's coming to mind is Billy seems pretty sure that this coon is in that hollow area of the tree. And Dad asked him, Grandpa asked him. Now for some reason, I don't even want to know what's going to happen if Billy does get this tree chopped all the way down and that coon is not up there. Okay. Well, in that case, Grandpa said, we better put our man along about here. What man, Grandpa? I asked, surprised. The one we're going to make, he said. To us, it'll be a scarecrow, but to the coons, it'll be a man. Knowing too well how smart the coons were right away, I began to lose confidence. I don't see how anything like that is going to keep the coon in the tree, I said. It'll keep him here all right, Grandpa said. Like I told you before, they're curious little devils. He'll poke his head out of the hole, see this man standing here, and he won't dare come down. It'll take him about 4 to 5 days to figure out that this isn't a real honest to goodness man. By the time, it'll be too late. You'll have the hide tacked on the smokehouse wall. And the more I thought about it, the more I believed it. And then there was a serious look on Grandpa's face. That was all it took. I was firmly convinced. I started laughing. The more I thought about it, the funnier it got. Great big laughing tears rolled down the cheeks. What's funny, Grandpa asked. Don't you believe it'll work? Sure it'll work, Grandpa, I said. I know it will. I was just thinking, those coons aren't half as smart as you think they are they? We both had a good laugh at that. We were, with the sticks and some baling wire, Grandpa made a frame that looked almost like a gingerbread man. On this, he put an old pair of pants, a red sweater. We stuffed it with loosely slabby clothes with grass and leaves. He wired the stocking cap head in place and stepped back to inspect his work. Well, what do you think of it? He asked. If it had a face, I said, you couldn't tell it from a real man. We can fix that, Grandpa chuckled. He took some sticks, dug a hole, dug some black grease from one of the limb caps on the buggy. I stood and watched while he applied an artistic touch. In the stocking cap ahead, he made 2 mean-looking eyes, a crooked nose, and the ugliest mouth I have ever seen. Well, what do you think of that? What do you think of it? What do you think of that? He asked. That looks pretty good, huh? Laughing fit to kill and talking all at the same time. I told him that I wouldn't blame the coon if he stayed in the tree until Gabriel blew his horn. He wouldn't stay there long, Grandpa chuckled. He'll stay long enough for you to cut the tree down. That's all I want, I said. We better get going, Grandpa. It's getting late and we don't want to miss that supper. I was so stiff and sore he had to help me to the buggy seat. I called my dogs. Little Ann came, but not willingly. Old Dan refused to leave the tree. Come on, boy, I coaxed. Let's go home and get something to eat. We'll come back tomorrow. He bowed his head and looked the other way. Come on, I scrolled. We can't sit here all night. This hurts his feelings. He walked around behind the big sycamore tree and hid. Well, I'll be darned, Grandpa said as he jumped down from the buggy. He knows that coon's there. He doesn't want to leave it. You've got a good coon hound there, and I mean a good one. He picked old Dan up by with his arms and set him in the buggy. All the way home, I had to hold his collar to keep him from jumping out and going back to the tree. So what I'm getting here real quick is that his dogs are following the same characteristics that Billy has. Very persistent, determined, quite interesting. He picked old Dan up in a, I'm sorry, I read that. Okay, as our buggy wound its way up there, up through the bottom, Grandpa started talking. You know, Billy, he said, about this tree chopping of yours, I think it's all right. In fact, I think it would be a great thing if all young boys had to cut down a big tree like that once in their life. It does something for them. It gives them determination and the power. That's the good thing for a man to have. It goes a long way in his life. The American people have a lot of it. They have proved that all down through history, but they could do with a lot more of it. I couldn't see the determination and the willpower that Grandpa was talking about very clearly. All I could see was a big sycamore tree, a lot of chopping, and the hide of the ring-tailed coon I was determined to have. As we reached the house, Mama came out. Right away, she started checking me over. Are you all right, she asked. Sure, Mama, I said. What makes you think something's wrong with me? Well, I don't know, she said. The way you acted when you got down from the buggy, I thought maybe you were hurt. Oh, just a little sore and stiff from all the chopping, Grandpa said, but he'll be all right. That soon goes away. After Mama saw that there was no broken bones or legs chopped off, she smiled and said, I never know anymore. I guess I'll just have to get used to it. Papa hollered from the porch, come on in, we've been waiting supper on you. We have chicken and dumpling, Mama beamed, and I cooked them especially for you. During the meal, I told Grandpa I didn't think that the coon was in I didn't think the coon in the big tree was the same one my dogs had been trailing at first. What makes you think that? He said. I told how the coons had fooled us and how little Ann had seen or heard this other coon. I figured he just walked up on my dogs before he realized it. A smile spread over Grandpa's face. Chuckling, he said, it doesn't look that way, but it wasn't. No, Billy, it was the same coon. They're much too smart to ever walk up on a hound like that. He pulled a trick and it was a good one. In fact, it fooled 9 out of the 10 dogs. Well, what did it do, Grandpa? I asked. I'm pretty sure he didn't cross the river. So how did it work? How did he work? Grandpa pushed the dishes back and using his fork and a pencil, he drew an imaginary line and on the tablecloth. He called it the backtracking trick, he said. Here's how it works. He climbs the water oak, but he only went up about 15 or 20 feet. He then turned around and came down the same tracks. He backtracked on his original trails for a way. When I heard your dog coming, he leaped far up on the other side of the nearest tree and climbed up. He was in the tree all the time your dogs were searching for the lost trail. After everything had quieted down, he figured that they had given up. That's when he came down, and that's when little Ann either heard or saw him. Pointing the fork at me, Grandpa said very seriously, you mark my words, Billy. In no time at all, that little Ann, will know every trick a coon can pull. You know, Grandpa, I said, she wouldn't bark teary at the water oak like little Ann did, like old Dan did. Of course she wouldn't, he said. She knew he wasn't there. Why, I never heard of such a thing, Mama said. I have no idea coons were that smart. Why, for all anyone knows, he may not be in the big tree at all. Maybe he pulled another trick. It'll be a shame if Billy cut it down and found there was no coon in it. I called it, but we don't know for sure if the coon is there or not. It's just, I don't know. It's just like a prediction we made, okay? Oh, he's there, Mama, I hastily replied. I know he is. They were right on his tail when he went up. Besides, little Ann was bawling her head off when I came to them. Of course he's there, Grandpa said. They were crowding him too closely. He didn't have no time to pull another trick. Grandpa left soon after supper, saying to me, I'll be back in a few days and I want to see that coon hide. I thanked him for helping me and walked out to the buggy with him. Oh, I almost forgot, he said. I heard there was a fade back in the New England states. Seems like everyone is going crazy over coonskin costs. Now, if this is true, I look for the price of coon hides, and coon hides to take a jump. I was happy to hear this and told my father what Grandpa said. Pa laughed and said, well, if you can keep the coon out of the big sagamores, you might make a little money. Before I went to bed, Mama made me a hot bath. Then she rubbed me all over with some liniment and burned like fire and smelled like a cement cat. It seemed like I had barely closed my eyes when Mama woke me up. Breakfast is ready, Billy, she said. I was so stiff and sore I had trouble putting my clothes on. Mama helped me. Maybe you better let that coon go, she said. I don't think it's worth all of this. I can't do that, Mama. I said, I've gone too far now. Papa came in from the barn. What's the matter, he asked. You a little stiff? A little stiff, Mama explained. Why, he could hardly put his clothes on. Oh, he'll be all right, Papa said. I know if I know anything about swinging an axe, it won't be long before he's a timber and a rag. He won't long before he's as timber as a rag. Mama just shook her head and started putting our breakfast on the table. While we were eating, Papa said, you know, I woke up several times last night, and each time I was sure I heard a hound bawling. It sounded like old Dan. I quit the table on the run and headed for my doghouse. I didn't have to go all the way. Little Ann met me at the porch. I asked her where old Dan was and called his name. He was nowhere around. Little Ann started acting strangely. She whined and stared towards the river bottoms. She ran out to the gate, came back, and reared up on me. Mama and Papa came out on the porch. He's not here, I said. I think he's gone back to the tree. I don't think he'd do that, would he? Mama said. Maybe he's around someplace. Have you looked at the doghouse? I ran and looked. He wasn't there. Everybody be quiet and listen, I said. I walked out beyond the gate a little way and whooped as loud as I could. My voice rang like a bell in the still foggy morning. Before the echo had died away in the deep ooh of old Dan rolled out of the river bottom. He's there, I said. He wanted to make sure the coon stayed up in the tree. You see, Mama? Why, I have to get that coon. I can't let him down. Well, I never in my life, she said. I had no idea the dogs love to hunt that much. Yes, Billy, I can see now. I want you to get him. I don't care if you have to cut down every tree in those bottoms. I want you to get that coon for those dogs. I'm going to get him, Mama, I said, and I'm going to get him today if I possibly can. Papa laughed and said, looks like there wasn't any use in building a scarecrow. All you had to do is tell Oann to stay and watch the tree. I left the house in a run. Now and then I would stop and whoop. Every time I was answered by the deep voice of old Dan. Little Ann ran ahead of me. By the time I reached the big tree, her voices were making the bottoms ring. When I came tearing out of the underbush, old Dan threw a fit. He tried to climb the sycamore. He would back way off, then bawling and running as fast as he could, he would claw his way from under on its side. Little Ann, not to be outdone, reared up and placed her small front paws on the smooth white bark. She told the ring-tailed coon that she knew he was there. After it had quieted down, I told old Dan I called old Dan to me. I'm proud of you, boy, I said. It takes a good dog to stay with a tree all night, but that wasn't any need in you coming back. The coon wouldn't have gotten away. That's why we built a scarecrow. Little Ann came over and started rolling in the leaves. The way I was feeling toward her, I couldn't even smile at her playful mood. Of course you feel good, I said in an irritated case. It's no wonder. You had a good night's sleep in a nice warm doghouse, but old Dan didn't. He's down here in the cold all by himself watching the tree. The way you're acting, I don't believe you care if the coon gets away or not. I would have said more, but just then I noticed something. I walked over for a better look. There, scratched deep in the soft leaf, were two little beds. It was smaller than the other. Looking at little Ann, I read the answer on her warm gray eyes. Old Dan hadn't been here alone when I had gone back to the tree. She had gone alone. She too had gone along. There was no doubt in the early morning she had come home to get me. There was a lump in my throat and I said, I'm sorry, little girl, I should have known. The first half hour was torture. At each swing of the axe, my arms felt like they were being torn from its socket. My grit and my teeth kept hatching away. My body felt like it did a time my sister rolled me down the hill in a barrel. As Papa said, in a little while, the warm heat from my hard work limbered me up. I remembered what my father did when he was swinging an axe. At the completion of each swing, he always said, "Ha, I tried it. Haram, ha, haram. Ha, I don't know if it helped or not, but I was willing to try anything if it would hurry the job." Several times before noon, I had stopped and raked my chips out of the way. I noticed that they weren't the big, even solid chips like my father made when he was chopping. They were small and seemed to crumble up and come into all to pieces. Neither were the cuts neat and even. They were ragged and looked more like the work of beavers. But I wasn't interested in the beautiful tree chopping. All I wanted to see or hear was a big sycamore start popping. Along in the middle of the afternoon, I felt stinging in one of my hands. When I saw that it was blisters, I almost cried. At first, there was only one, then two. On another, one after another, they rose on my hands like small white marbles. They filled up and turned to pale pinkish color. When one would burst, it was all I could do. When one would burst, it was all I could do to keep me from screaming. I tore my handkerchief in half, wrapped my hands. This helped for a while, but the cloth began sticking to the raw flesh. I knew it was the end. Crying my heart out, I called my dogs to me. I showed them my hands. I did it. I can't do it, I said. I've tried, and I just can't cut it down. I can hold the axe no longer. Little Ann whined and started licking my sores. Old Dan seemed to understand. He showed his sympathy by muzzling me with his head. Heartbroken, I started for home. As I turned from the corner of my eye, I saw Grandpa's scarecrow. It seemed to be laughing at me. I looked over to the big sycamore. It lacked so little being cut down. A little small wedge of solid wood was all it was holding it up. I let my eyes follow the smooth white trunk up to the huge spreading limb. Sobbing, I said, "You think you've won, but you haven't. Although I can get the coon, neither can you live, because I have cut off your breath of life." And then I thought, why kill the big tree and not accomplish anything? I began to feel bad. Kneeling down between my dogs, I cried and prayed, "Please, God, give me the strength to finish this job. I don't want to leave the big tree like that. Please help me finish the job." I was trying to unwrap my hands so I could go back to work when I heard a low, droning voice sound. I stood up and looked around. I could still hear the noise, but couldn't locate it. I looked up high in the top of the sycamore. A breeze had started the limbs and swaying. A shunder ran through the huge trunk. I looked over to my right at the big black gum tree. Not one limb was moving. On the branches, a few dead leaves hung silent and still. One dropped and floated lazily toward the ground. Over on my left stood a large hackberry. I looked up at its top. It was still as a fierce post. Another gust of wind caught the top of the big tree. It started popping and snapping. I knew it was going to fall. Grabbing my dogs by the collar, I backed off to safety. I held my breath. At the top of the big sycamore rocked and swayed. There was a loud crack and seemed to come from a deep inside the heavy trunk. Fascinated, I stood and watched the giant of the bottoms. It seemed to be fighting so hard to keep standing. Several times I thought it would fall, but in a miraculous way, it would pull itself back to its perfect balance. So the wind is coming in, he's hearing the sound, and he's predicting that this tree is going to timber fall over at any moment, but he's saying that it would just go back into its perfect balance. The wind itself seemed to be angry at the big tree's stubborn resistance. It growled and moaned, and it pushed harder against the wavering top. With one final grinding, creaking sigh, a big sycamore started down. I picked up momentum as the heavy weight of the overbalanced top drove to the ground. A small ash was smothered with its huge bulk. There was a lightning crack in its trunk as its trunk snapped. In the downward plunge, the huge limb stripped the branches from the smaller one. A long-sized one knifed through the top of the water oak. Splintered limbs flew skyward and rained out over the bottoms. With the cyclone roar, the big tree crashed to the ground, and then silence settled over the bottom. Out of the broken, twisted, tangled mass streaked a brown furry ball. I turned my dogs loose and started screaming at the top of my voice, "Get him, Dan, get him!" In his eagerness, old Dan ran into a burr of oak tree. He sat and with his deep voice told the river bottom that he had been hurt. It was Little Ann who caught the coon. I heard the ringtail squeal when she grabbed him. Scared half to death, I snatched up the cub and ran to help her. The coon was all over her. He climbed up on her head, growling, slashing, ripping, and tearing. Yelping with pain, she shook him off, and he streaked for the river. I thought surely he was going to get away. At the very edge of the riverbank, she caught him again. I was trying hard to get in a lick with my club, but I couldn't for the fear of hitting Little Ann. So the coon and Little Ann, the girl dog, are in like a fight, and Billy is afraid to hit the coon with his club, also known like as a stick, because he doesn't want to injure Little Ann in the process. Through the tears in my eyes, I saw the red, blurry form of old Dan sail into the fight. He was a madhound. His anger at the burr oak tree was taken out at the coon. They stretched old Ringy out between them and pinned him down to the ground. I was savage and brutal. I could hear the dying squeals of the coon and the deep growls of old Dan. In a short time, it was all over. With sorrow in my heart, I stood and watched while my dogs worried the lifeless body. Little Ann was satisfied as first. I had to scold old Dan to make him stop. Carrying the coon by a hind leg, I walked back to the big tree for my axe. Before leaving for home, I stood and looked at the fallen sycamore. I should have felt proud over the job I had done, but for some reason I couldn't. I knew I would miss the giant of the bottoms, for it had played a wonderful part in my life. I thought of the hours I had while away staring at its beauty and how hard it had been finding the right name for it. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't want to cut you down. I had to. I hope you can understand." I was a proud boy, and as I walked along in the twilight of the evening, I felt so good. Even my sore hands had stopped hurting. What boy wouldn't have been proud? Hadn't my little hounds treat and killed their first coon? Along then, I decided I was full-fledged coon hunter. I was a full-fledged coon hunter. Nearing our house, I saw the whole family had come out of the porch. My sisters came running, staring wide-eyed at the dead coon. Laughing, Paul said, "Well, I see you got him." "I sure did, Papa," I said. I held the coon up for all to see. Mama took one look at the lifeless body and winced. "Billy," she said, "when I heard the big tree fall, it scared me half to death. I didn't know but what it had fallen on you." "Aw, Mom," I said, "I was safe. Why, I backed off to one side. It couldn't have fallen on me." Mama shook her head. "I don't know," she said. "Sometimes I wonder if all mothers have to go through this." "Come on," Papa said. "I'll help you skin it." While we tackled the hide on the smokehouse wall, I asked Papa if he had noticed any wind blowing that evening. He thought a bit and said, "No, I don't believe I did. I've been out all day and I'm pretty sure I haven't noticed the wind." "Why did you ask?" "Oh, I don't know, Papa," I said, "but I thought something strange happened down at the bottoms this afternoon." "I'm afraid I don't understand," said Papa. "What do you mean? Something strange happened?" I told him about my hands and how they'd gotten so sore I couldn't chop anymore, and how he asked for the strength and how I asked for strength to finish the job. "Well, that's so strange. What's so strange about that?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, "but I didn't chop the big tree down. The wind blew it over." "Why, that's nothing," Papa said. "I've seen that happen a lot of times." "It wasn't the wind," I said. It was the way it blew. It didn't touch another tree in the bottoms. I know because I looked around. The big tree was the only one touched by the wind. Do you think God heard my prayers? Do you think he helped me?" Papa looked at the ground and scratched his head. In a somber voice, he said, "I don't know, Billy. I'm afraid I can't answer that. You must remember the big sycamore was the tallest tree in the bottoms. Maybe it was there, but they're high enough to catch the winds where the others couldn't. No, I'm afraid I can't help you. You'll have to decide for yourself. It wasn't hard for me to decide. I was firmly convinced that I had been helped. Very nice. That was chapter 9 of Where the Red Fern Grows. Tomorrow we're going to jump into chapter 10. Very interesting. So Billy has fully experienced his first coon hunting with his dogs in hunting season, has caught it. Not only did he get an experience, but he got the coon out of the biggest tree in the woods. He's very determined. His dogs are very determined. They're building this incredible bond with him and his dogs. It's very interesting. And to see that Billy's faith also plays a role in it is quite interesting as well. So tomorrow we'll see what chapter 10 has in store for us. So stay tuned, and I hope you're enjoying each chapter as I read. See y'all tomorrow.